Hi, this is Junkcast. What is Junkcast, do you ask? Well, a long time ago, in the before time, we had a thing called Voidcast, where people got together. Namely, I think the last people were Pyrus Terran and what do they call themselves these days? Hot Rod? In which they discussed Void comics and battles. It was really great, and I think the last one was in, April 5th of 2019. So I thought it'd be really nice, especially with all the activity and stuff that's going on, especially the huge collaboration that just happened, to sort of do something, quick and dirty and discuss it because we appreciate you guys. We appreciate your efforts, and I really want to talk about it. So here we are. I just want to introduce me, which is Kozispoon, and William Duell.
That's me, William Duell.
And Arts and Goodies.
Hello.
You may know me from such characters such as
my God.
Caballero, Sobat. If you don't, then wait. What's wrong with you?
Anything that you would like to add, Arts and Goodies?
I don't have anything to add to this.
My name says it all.
I am the person with the cat.
There we go. Well, we all namely wanted to talk about the Armageddon Road to Hell collaboration that just happened because it is incredibly huge and so many people were in it and we have things to say. First and foremost, since we have the person here, we had a couple questions that we sent to Cab, who organized this whole thing, that I really would like for him to answer. So if you could unmute yourself and let me ask the questions, I'd love for you to answer them.
I will never mute myself.
Wait a minute. Not Cab, that's you, Will.
I am muted. Don't worry.
All right, cool. So first question, because I would love to know, what inspired or prompted, apart from the actual Armageddon, the Arma 2020 collab?
So why this big collab and everything? Well, okay. So as I told some people before, the idea and basis of this was I was seeing a lot of people audition for Arma. There was well over 30 people auditioning for Arma.
So many people, so many good people too.
And I knew that of course only 8 people would have been chosen. So there would have been a lot of people not being able to participate, not being able to there was a lot of rich hype for Arma. A lot of people I want to see my character do this at Arma, and I want to see my character do this. And I, coming from the OCT community background, I know what it is to want to participate in something and then not make the cut.
Just real quick, for people who may not know, what is OCTs and where do they mainly happen? But at least for you.
Okay, OCTs are original character tournaments. They're similar to Void in certain aspects, as in there you have original characters. You audition to get into an event, much like, let's say, Arma, but it has a selected roster. And it lasts up to a year most of the time, and it's single elimination kind of thing. So once you can spend almost a year to audition. Once you get in, and then all of a sudden take a month or two to make one round, and then get eliminated, and then you're completely out of the thing. So,
oh my gosh.
So it could be a whole lot of work for very little gain. And so I see sometimes why people sometimes get salty if they don't get in. And I've seen some bad stuff when that happens. And I was like, you know what? I love this place, and I want to find something for people to do, so that even though they didn't make it into Arma, they can have something collaborative and be like, hey, we didn't get in, but here's something we can still work together. And it also hypes Arma. And it's your idea of what you could have done in Arma. It's because a lot of people had so many good ideas with their characters of what they...
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And I was like, hey, how about if we do this? This would be always good. And it gives us something to do. And like I said, it also hypes up Arma, because then it's, while everyone's waiting for the actual Armageddon to happen, this could be read and stuff.
I did have a question.
Yeah.
What were the difficulties that you encountered while you were organizing this? And was this like your first time organizing something this big? And who helped you?
So here's the thing. Originally, when I was coming up with this collab thing, I was picturing it never to be as big as it got, because originally I was like, a few people knew about this, and there was like some people were like, oh yeah, I'll do this, and then other people were like, I'll just do a Beyond battle, and I was like, cool, you know. I was expecting it no more than probably 6 people.
You laid out a plate of crackers and some juice for like a small party of 5, but you got a house party.
Yeah, and then which is great because like said, part of this whole thing was to for anyone who not to exclude anyone. Everyone would have been invited. Everyone could do it. And, like, I just thought like because everyone had like other ideas, they were like, I want to do my own 50-page Beyond battle and stuff like that. I was like, okay. You do that. This is something small and intimate. And that was another reason why I tried to keep it short. Like I implemented that minimum 1 page, maximum 3 pages. Although some people made it to 4 pages, but because
a lot of people just went YOLO to your rule.
Well, and the reason for that was I didn't want 2 points. One, I didn't want burnout because I didn't want people to like just die like doing this. Because I was thinking if I do this in like 2-3 weeks, we do 3 pages. 3 pages in 3 weeks isn't that hard. I was thinking, you know, and so it was something to be quick, easy, yet entertaining. And if in case people are like, I got work to do or I have other battles I want to do, that's why it was like, yeah, that's why it's very simple. You can do this and do your other battles or do work. I myself work 6 days a week. So I was somehow able to do this. Thankfully, with the help of people who helped me on this.
Yeah, give us some shout outs on who helped you. I'd love to know.
So so when I made the Discord, and then I literally had to almost go to work within 30 minutes after making the initial Discord, and I knew I was like, oh man, I was like, dang, I need to make this Discord. I remember inviting Futini was one of the first people in there, and I was like, Futini, here's the link, and he was like, hey, there's
so wait, by merit of being the first one there, you're like, you're hired.
It's not that he was just the first one there, but it was just like I remember he was like, hey, I know a few people who might be interested. Do you mind if I share the link? I was like, yeah, I'm gonna be at work. Just share the link to anyone who you think is interested who might want to do this. And then I went off to work. Hours later, I come back. There's over 30 people in there. I was like, wow. Okay. Futini, what happened?
So Futini, take a bow, and this is all your fault.
No, I wasn't a pit. I was like, dang, that's a big turnout. And then I asked Futini, I was like, okay, Futini, what happened? And I don't mean like what happened, why they were there. I wanted to know, like, since I was gone for like 9 hours, I was like, is there any problems, any issues? And then that's when I was like, oh, someone had this question and someone had this question. And I knew that, well, I'm going to be at work during some of these hours. So I asked, okay, who can be here to answer questions and monitor and do stuff when I'm not here? So ultimately, Futini, Rikun, and Candy Corn Rhino were the 3 that,
Gotcha.
because they lived in different time zones and they also had flexibility with their schedules.
Oh, that's a big brain move. I like that.
So that was like, okay, they're going to be there when I'm not there. So that's why a lot of times I would come home from at night and I would be like, Rikun, Futini, Rhino, what happened today? Give me a status. And then like they would give me like, oh, they're waiting on this. What do we got to do with this? And I would, it was almost like a brain trust of like figuring things out.
Working that one brain cell.
Sai also helped out by the table of contents, creating that. And I apologize so much for Sai because like I know he wanted to make this table of content right away, but we were like, okay, and here this goes into tips and difficulties of organizing this. I knew there was like it took almost a week to figure out sometimes what people wanted to do because it happened a little bit of figuring out things as it went along. Like people were like, "Hey, can we have a channel, Teams?" And I was like, "Yeah, that sounds good. Let's make that." And then there was like, "Hey, can we make a channel for this?" So things were developing, up and running, and so things that now seem logical weren't there initially because I didn't know like, oh, what do you think people want, and hence why we had to get it going. And so there were things like Sai was like, "Hey, let's do a table of contents," and I'm like, "That's cool." I have no idea who all the teams are right now, and half of the people don't, because some people ended up seeking others while in the Discord in there, and they became their own teams. And then there was a lot of, okay, now we know this person's making a team. How many pages? And that was another issue. I think we thank God we eventually made that Google Doc, that Excel sheet that that posted the progress. That was Rikun, me. We basically made that, and we decided to color code it instead of making percentage of like points, because I was like, you know what?
For artists, we don't do math.
Well, that, and we didn't want it to be like anyone to kind of feel bad if in case like, oh, you're only at 2%, I'm at 80%. So it's just
now it's more just color judgment. Oh, you're still in the gray.
Well, because no, actually, only one person was ever gray for a while, and that was because they didn't respond right away. So most people were always in progress.
Mm-hmm.
So that was like, that was the go-to answer. It's like, how far along are they? I don't know. They're in progress, so they're working on it.
Also, I like that low-key jab. Now that I see Shen laughing to the threat, it's like, oh, you're gray, judging.
And so. So that was a lot of like, okay, and so I remember Sai who would send me a message. It was like, okay, can you give me the table of content? I was like, we're still figuring it out, because once we got the teams, we were like, how long are these stories? So that required also us to message people and figure and ask around. And I remember like asking like, hey Futini, do you know how many pages this is? And Rikun, can you ask how many pages are that? I'm going to go investigate. And we all went investigating, asking around, how many pages do you think the story is? And then the problem was, some people didn't even know themselves. Like, they'll be like, oh yeah, it's going to be 4 pages. Oh, it's going to be 3 pages. And then we'll be like, okay, it's 3 pages. And then like a few days later, oh yeah, I was able to condense it to 2 pages. Oh, all right. Well, that throws off our numbers.
Mm-hmm.
And then there was like, oh, I'm just going to do a 1-page comic. Oh, you know what? I'm going to do a 3-page comic instead. And because of that, the table of content changed like 4 or 5 times, I believe. There was a lot of renumbering, a lot of...
So pro tip, keep your table of contents as a PSD, just to edit on the fly.
And like, make sure you do that like close to the end. Also... that was the other challenge, was that Sai lives in Malaysia, so times where it was like, okay, we got the information, but we gotta wait until he wakes up. So
I gotcha.
So there's always time zones to be accounted for, and thank God we were okay. Let's do soft deadlines. People were originally they were a little confused with that. They were like, "Is this the actual deadline?" I was like, "No, that's the soft deadline." So that and the original first soft deadline was never like, this is the day we need it to be done. I just need to know, so we could get closer to it. Once we explained the soft deadline and gave the 1-week extension, things got a little bit smoother. So if there were any things, like I said, if there were any advice, I would say for other voiders to going forward, table of contents, keep it always, keep it like, don't do it until it's done.
Which is kind of interesting, because historically, and I'll probably get into this a bit later, the past big collabs on the site haven't really included table of contents. Like this is the first one in a long while that's actually had one. And so far, I've heard nothing but positive things. I know even for the 3 of us who are doing this Junkcast, we were just talking about, like, man, it really is great that table of contents is there, so we can just pick where it is and what we want to talk about, as opposed to just having to scroll through all the pages.
Like, here, I'll even post for those people, for the first time, they'll see what the contents at one point kind of looked like for Psy. I sent them originally. At one point, it's like, hey, this is what we got so far. Things, titles, and need to be adjusted, but here's a starting point kind of thing.
Oh, beautiful.
And like the numbers are potential number of pages, and we're like, yeah, it's like 10 pages. Oh, it's 4 pages. It's 3 pages. It will be actually interesting to if I can look at this and then compare it to the final thing and see how many names have changed, how many titles, how many things were altered since then. But it's what we were gonna go with.
I'm glad that we managed to get you in here. This is the first place you went to when you logged online.
Like I said, I woke up and I was like, oh no, they're asking questions. I better go. I didn't know you were recording. I was like, not.
This is great serendipity, and I'm so glad that you popped in here and kind of gave us an illumination, because this is stuff that, we're here just sort of talking about, but we never would have found out any of the, guts and nuts and bolts if you hadn't come in. So I really appreciate that. And I want to give an appreciative little golf clap to Futini, Rikun, Candy Corn Rhino, and Sai for all of this effort.
Now, there's one last thing I know people have asked about, and at this point, I'm still holding on the answer. So the collab was always envisioned as a 2-parter, with part 1 being Road to Hell, which is what we just finished, and a potential second called Aftermath, or was it Fallout? I believe it was the working title. And I always said, like, Armageddon Fallout would be after we find out the results of Arma, after the voting phase is over. And it would just be our characters reacting or having to deal with what the aftermath of if we won. Now, people ask, are we still going to do that? And I'm like, you know what? I'm gonna wait and see, because I know a lot of people are burned out and exhausted.
You're not gonna give us a Junkcast exclusive of a yay or nay?
Like I said, I'm down for it. I know some people are down for it. I can't definitively say how big it will be. It might be smaller. Who knows? It might be bigger.
This feels so Hollywood. Are you going to do it? Maybe.
If there's enough demand for the sequel, we might do the sequel. Like, that's the thing. Like, I love the idea of doing one last thing. Because ultimately, what I loved about this most of all is I love that this was a miscellaneous different stories. I know some people are like, do we do one big story? I'm like, no, you do your story with your characters. It makes the city feel very much alive. And I love how we put it like that. Like, the stories just are all happening at the same time. It's almost like we're teleporting. We, the viewer, the reader, are teleporting at various different sites at the city, and we're seeing things happen in real time. Like, oh, this is happening, this happening. Instead of like previous things where it's like, oh, it almost feels
that way.
Yeah, it almost feels like other Armas where like the whole city would just freeze and we just sit back and wait for the defenders to save the world, Here we get like, this is also happening. Like, while the Arma threat is going on, we have a character buying food. We have a character, escaping like fires, and it's just all these things that would happen in an actual city. It's a miscellaneous calamities going around.
Speaking of miscellaneous calamities, I definitely want to get into those, but I wanted to thank you again so much for coming in and giving us a bit of introspective details and stuff. So clap for you. You can't hear my hands, but I'm clapping for you. But I definitely want to get into us kind of digging into all of these comics. There was such a wealth of them, and I just want to jump into it. And I want to give the floor to Willie Duel, because I'd love for you to start with, we all kind of like went through this together. We want to talk about some of the bigger ones that really kind of stood out to us and we wanted to expand upon. So, well,
Okay, I just wanted to talk a little bit about because we had the holiday collab before this, and I hated the holiday collabs like with a passion.
explain why you hated them with a passion.
Because there were huge unwieldy messes that were like super disorganized, did not have the table of contents that this did, and like were very difficult to read through. Well,
yes, this was pre-Discord, I think.
Maybe.
Yeah, I would say so.
What that was most frustrating is that people argued against having a table of contents, and I was like, why? Yeah, so
I love how important this table of contents has become.
The table of contents.
So when they were talking about having this Armageddon collab, and like, you know, there were a lot of people involved, I was like, oh my god, we're going through this again. I'm gonna be so mad.
Will's having war flashbacks.
But actually, it ended up as a much better result than the previous ones. This is way better organized. The stories flow a little better.
Yeah,
I'd say that this was an awesome job done all around. And it's funny when you're talking about like the soft deadlines and whatever, having organized frustratingly to like Void anthologies. Purple Fire will come out someday. Yeah, it is important to have a fake deadline.
I completely agree. Willie, did we lose you?
I'm sorry about that.
Get his dog or something.
Yeah, I'm just being called in the background. Sorry about that. But okay, so for the next. Okay, so now I will go back to the comic that we're talking about. So for my end, I decided that the ones that I wanted to talk about were let's see. Thank you again, Don, for organizing this for me. The very first comic, which was Waiting for You to Go by Cav and Futini, the people who started this whole thing. So might as well, you know.
That's a good start.
Break them first.
Break them.
Yeah, so I'm looking, and the interesting thing about these collabs is I can't tell who did what. So, you know, it's a sort of like looking at it and just sort of giving comments in the general. And there's one big problem I see here that I see throughout the collab. So I feel it's an important point for me to talk about this now. This is too wordy. This is way too wordy for a comic.
I can agree with that.
The interesting is, and again, I saw this throughout the collab, was everybody has like their own ideas about like hell and demons and how things work. Having exposition dumps in front of the audience is not the place to do it. You can have those ideas and like have them in the background, but yeah, there's way too much information, and not only that, there's not a good sense of flow with the word balloons. The word balloons should be arranged in such a way as to guide the eye through the page. So, like, if you take a step back and you look at all this, where is your eye going? It's kind of a little too all over the place with this. I mean, otherwise, I think it's good in that this works as a framing device for the rest of the collaboration, which I think is like an awesome idea. But
it was a great bookend to everything that went on.
Yeah, it was a good. Also, it was a good start, like, of the storytellers, and two of the really most powerful beings who they wanted to. I believe both could just like fuck it all and just end it if they want to, but they're more interested in seeing how it goes out. So it's cool to start with like two types of those characters.
Concur.
So yeah, but otherwise the idea of it is very cool. It's just please be careful with all those words, unnecessary words. Like even when you're defining like Armageddon, None of that really adds to the story. Some of it's repetitive, but it is interesting the back and forth and having us be like, oh, these characters have a history, they know each other, and they hate the fuck out of each other.
I agree. There's one thing that I did notice. You can definitely tell Cab's influence in the art because they have this thing where they always put in like extra flex and grits and just, for lack of a better word, just environment junk that isn't really buildings or physical things. It's just like schmutz. It's sort of like a telltale that's Cab's work, which I personally am not a fan of. But when it comes to something like literal hell on earth, it worked really well here. So I was just like, oh, I am pleasantly surprised. This totally works thematically for me.
So I guess those are the only points I want to make about that. Should I move on to my second?
Do.
Go for it.
So I picked the second one mostly because I wanted to reiterate a lot of the points of the first one. Interestingly enough, I didn't realize Cab worked on both of these. So sorry, Cab. I'm gonna tear you apart twice. Because
But with love, we're doing it with love.
Well, there are lessons to be learned here. So Lapel de Vie, which is Cab and Flutterby's story, Flutterby's, Flutterby, Bebop.
The Y is silent.
So again, I encountered the same problem as before. Way too many words. In fact, when I first, and at least this one's broken up over a few pages, but like when I first saw how wordy it was, I skipped over this entirely. Like I actually went back and read this last because there is so much here, and if you can cut out most of it, because it doesn't really add to whatever story you're telling. Story should be about, like, when you're writing, you should think about forward motion. Like, the things that I'm introducing into the story, are they heading towards a goal, or are these things extraneous? Like, what is the goal of the story that I'm telling here? And it's hard for me to say, like, what the point of the story is, except for Benjamin to listen to himself talk.
But that seems in character, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's like sort of Ben's thing. It's just this weird sort of
I like hearing myself talk.
Well, it's like also like he has this weird postgraduate like sense of existential dread that sometimes like I sort of like that. Like I do sometimes like skim over the dialogue, don't read it all, but there's that like, feeling that comes from like Ben comics that Flutter writes, where it's like there's a bit of happy, but there's also a bit of existential dread with him at the same time.
Oh, I agree with you to a point. I'm 100% with Will in that it is too wordy. Like, and I'm going to post it in the lecture notes itself. This panel alone, I'm just like, it's too many words. It completely overwhelms the panel itself and the art, which I think sequential work lends itself more to the visuals than the word bubbles.
It's too many words. And also, while we were talking about this, like, I was just looking to find a little thing, just a little guide thing on like how much words you should have in a page. Although it's to mainly specifically like regular comic pages, so for like these long scroll ones with more panels, it wouldn't necessarily as much of apply. And I'm still looking through my desk for it to just find out.
A really good question.
Yeah.
Like, I'm curious, Will, what would you think of how some people say traditionally with a comic page, you should stick to at least 8 panels per page. Do you think that there's a word bubble or dialogue limit that should sort of coincide with comic pages? Pregnant pause.
To duel.
Those to duel. Or you. I'm fine with any opinion.
I'm still trying to find that thing. Well, it's like, it's not a hard rule, but when I've like used it, it's just generally been a good guideline where it's like, if I'm drastically over like the number that it was recommending, I'm like, oh, this really is too wordy and I can cut it down.
Mm.
Like, that's what I found. Find this fucking thing. Why do I live in such a mess? Okay, I found it. So it was like, keep in mind this like was just a rule of thumb and not like a hard rule, but like a guideline. And it was also for traditional comic pages that it was talking about. But the idea was like 25 word a rule of thumb, no more than 25 words per bubble, 35 words per panel, and 125 words per page. That's a standard comic page, not like a web scroll page.
Yeah.
I'd like to hear your opinion on that.
Kidding.
You, Kozi, because I don't know where dual and then dual both y'all's opinion.
Dual freaking yeeted from this Junkcast. Truly, it is the junkiest.
Don finally got dual. It was only a matter of time.
Yeah, Don was like, "Give me the password." No, but like I agree. It's kind of as an artist, it frustrates me that it's a fact of life that people will eat up your page in seconds and it takes like weeks or months for you to get through it. But at the same time, there's a facility and an enjoyment in them digesting the information that easily so the story comes across. So while I don't have an opinion on hard numbers or, these should be your limits, I think that there should be room for relaying information, but doing it in a way that it flows along with the art. And it's like, if you have a lot of words that you want to like put in, I think that you have to sort of accept the fact that if you want to get wordy, that means that you need to get more visually. That's a word. Like if you want to pack in the words, you have to put in extra panels and scenes to compensate for that.
Yeah, I agree with that. To show it. Oh.
If you want to get wordy, get more arty. Thank you, Futini.
Yep.
So, can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
Sorry, I had to switch to the laptop. The desktop stopped working.
God dang it!
I had so many good things to say. You didn't hear anything.
Well, you can still say them. Go for it.
So you were saying about limits, and comics don't really have those sorts of limits. In that you can find an example of like so many things of different panel types, ways of speaking across a comic. I will say, and I've said this in the past, my least favorite writer in comics is Michael Brian Bendis. He is a very wordy guy.
For those who don't know, give us like some context.
He's a mainstream writer. He's the guy who actually created the Miles Morales version of Spider-Man. I can find the page of his writing because he is well known for he has a very particular style of speech. The problem is that like his dialogue takes up a whole page and does not move a story forward. So you can find lots of comics where like nothing happens because it's him writing a lot of back and forth. And some people like that. Some people love it. He has his fans. I personally hate it. I do not like it at all. I don't think it works for comics, but there is that example of having a page full of dialogue.
All right, I get you.
But even looking at his examples that I'm gonna share in the lecture notes, as wordy as he is, there's still a structure and a flow, even if it's a very like straightforward panel grid one. So even when you're trying to be wordy, like please keep in mind the organization of your words, the fact that the wording should also guide. Your words are part of your composition. So when you're planning your comics, you should also keep in mind what sort of composition, where you're going to leave your words, what kind of spacing you're going to have.
No, I completely agree with that. I think that, especially in earlier Void, the word bubbles and placing and composition was sort of an afterthought. But I think that it's become something that's much more valued now because people are more interested in story as opposed to the spandex flash bam boom, which still has a space here. But I think that people are like, well, I want to get, into the nitty gritty of, and I say this with huge quotation marks, but the Void canon and lore and stuff like that. But was there anything that either of you wanted to add to La Pelle de Vite?
I think we covered the whole word thing pretty well. I'm probably not as extreme as Duel on it, but I'm pretty sure I'm more towards the like less wordy side. But I also have gotten more used to the web scroll, which lends itself a little bit differently to the whole word panel orientation thing, and that changes it up even more than just a regular comic page. And I just also personally like panels that are just like silent or just like with few words to help just move things along emotionally or visually.
Like a visual narrative. I can dig that.
Like the one video we both posted in Comic Resources.
Yeah.
That is actually that if anyone hasn't checked that out, I'll just post it here. Just already been posted twice in Comic Resources, but I'll post it here in Void Lecture because it's a good video. Just showing emotion with the dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Badger's right. The video's so nice. He posted thrice.
But speaking of nice things, I did want to move on to your picks that you wanted to discuss, Arts.
Okay, so I am talking about what are the names? Okay, the names of those ones I want to talk about.
Yes, the names of those ones.
I want to talk about Candy Corn, Crocstyle, Rand, Franken, Putrid's collab, A Safer Hell, which was split up into 3 parts, and I'll also be talking about Bat and Obergoat's comic, and the names for that first one is Safer Hell, Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, and then Bats and Obergoats is dealing with demons. So I'll start with the bigger one, and the one thing I just wanted to get off the get-go of it is I love the establishing shots in all 3 parts of it. And I don't know if this is the only story that does it, because it seems like the other bigger overarching ones were like in a row. Whereas this one, all 3 parts were separated. But because of the establishing shots of each of them, it really works. And it gives the whole collab as a sense of like time moving. Like it's not Iron Cap did say it was like us switching between like one thing happening to another at the same time. But this collab in particular helps also give it a sense of like time progressing as people are just dealing with the Arma, and that these are not just happening at once, but they're like time is moving on and they're all having to deal with this fuck death of demons.
No, I agree with it.
Also, I like how, at least in the first 2 parts, the demon designs, I don't know who designed the demons for these collabs, but I like the designs, and they look like kind of like similar in the sense that it was like unified throughout the different parts, where it seemed like they were like from the same hell sect.
Hell sect.
I don't know, hell section, because
I love that.
Yeah.
Oh, I see you're from the demon accounting as well.
Yeah, not hell sack, hell sec. But yeah, yeah.
No, I just like the visual of a bunch of demons in a sack. Just like, are you from my sack? Yeah.
Yeah, we don't have enough time to talk on everything, single thing as a whole. Just a brief thing, I'll say as everything as a whole, it's really awesome that it happened. And literally at 6 a.m. when I couldn't sleep, when I read this, I'm like, okay, I don't need to sleep. I'll just draw a little bit because it inspired. It's the best type of comic for me as a whole, the collab, is that it's the comic that makes me want to make comics, which are, in my opinion, the best type of comics to read. So I just want to say everyone did a great job on it. I want to talk about these ones in particular. So back to the Safer Hell one. I like the establishing shots of all of them. Also, all the artists like collab like really well. Like style worked really well. Like Rand and Candy's. I think it was like Candy did the pencils, Rand did the inks for that one. I don't know exactly for sure. But they worked well. Rand's pencils and Stylo's colors worked really well. So it was just, and then I don't know what the split was on the final one, but it looks really good also.
Yeah, the final one has to be my favorite. I just love the ambient fuzziness that they have with the establishing shots.
Yeah, that might be my favorite. Like all the establishing shots are good because I like the one of the gang because it helps get like a layout of that building. I love the details of that building. Like on the second one, the part 2, that detailed build, and the first one's also just a really good establishing shot. They all have I've already said it, but the establishing shots on these are all really good. and it all helps collab as a whole feel like things are constantly moving.
Yeah, for sure. If there's one thing I did want to touch upon, just story-wise, that I found really confusing, especially with, I think it's the third section, which starts on page 50, is where we introduce Prototype to witnessing Marie and Cecil for the first time. These are three very intense characters. At least they've been established as such in their respective comics. Marie, not so much. I'm not too familiar. But they all seem like lone wolves. They all seem like people that would not work in a group together, and yet they do. Like Prototype, especially, like in their tournament, they come off as sort of like, I do my own thing, I don't speak, and I'm violent and scary. Like, why would they follow anybody? Much less recruit people, and much less, why would Marie or even Cecil even be at all interested?
I feel like, at least for Cecil and Marie, it's more like they just don't have a choice. It's like, what are they going to do? Fight the giant dino and eat shit? They're like, to me, it read off more as like, Cecil's like, oh, it's like, I almost got caught trying to kill this person. I'll just casually go along so they don't suspect me as trying to kill this person. And Marie's just a sketchy doctor who seems to work, like, at least from what I got from her personality, she's not like, she's crazy, but she's also willing to like work with people to get her own. So, but
while I agree with that, I feel that this could have been framed more in character, in which Prototype may have forced them, like, doesn't really understand being a good Samaritan or being kind, so just sort of strong-arming them and like, I have to find survivors and just drag them along.
Yeah, no,
as opposed to like, hey guys, we're here to help out. It just seemed kind of odd to me.
Yeah.
Suicide Squad.
I apologize. Where can I see these comics?
They're basically, specifically we're talking about part 3 of it, which is pages 50 to 52.
Where is the link? I'm trying to find the link.
Oh my god, let me get you the link. Oh my god. So one crit I did want to bring up is, specifically on the third, I have
I got him.
Yeah. So one crit I wanted to bring up on the third part is the weird, like, different levels of opacity on the text bubbles. Like,
I wish they were solid for sure.
Yeah, because it's like it seems inconsistent. Like I think the idea behind it was that more quiet things were going to be like less opaque, and regular and other things aren't. But it wasn't quite applied that way, and it didn't work out. It seems like that was the idea, but it didn't work out, and it looks like it was sort of arbitrary for that part. And that was the one main thing that. Also, another super minor, like, visual thing was one of the panels on the third page of it where there's a little star thing. It's supposed to be Mary giving off the star, just like pretending to be nice. But since it's closer to, oh god, it's redacted to, what's his name? Prototype.
I mean, you could technically call him redacted. I mean, half of him is.
Yeah. Proto 2, because that little star on, let me just read and then you can see all my tabs.
Just call it the dinosaur.
Yeah, the dinosaur. Like, I'm talking about this little star right here, because it's closer to Proto than it is to Mary. At first it looked off like a Proto was giving it off, and I was just a little confused, but then I realized that was Mary giving the little star thing. That is a super minor spacing thing, but those little things matter. And
if there's one thing I really enjoyed about this collaboration, even though some of the character, like, I'm going to be part of this team, made no characteristic sense to me, I love the fact that people came together and made, like, a huge group. I know that there are other collaborations in here, namely Flighty's. I know Flighty had a bunch of other collaboration partners, but their art stands out so much to me. It's the only name I can remember. They had that big story arc as well, which I really enjoyed. And I feel that those characters meshed and had a more understandable reason to come together. I wish that this collaboration dealt with bad guys and the conflict of bad guys coming together. It just seemed almost too perfect.
Oh, speaking of bad guys coming together, the other one that I was going to talk about was Overgoats and that one with demons. And that was actually what I want to talk about, is because, like, everyone's fighting them, but here these two are just, like, finding one to capture and then work with it, which is really cool. Like, It's pretty cool. Like that's a sort of bad guy thing, but also like not pure evil, but like more chaos, more neutral. Because like Croy, I don't know how to say his name. Croy's not a bad guy, but he just recruits uses this opportunity to recruit a demon. He's just really business forward guy.
I can agree with that. And I love the demon's design. I thought it was really neat. I mean, overall, for the whole collaboration, people's ideas for demons have been really cool.
Yeah, though I did want to say about the demon design, specifically like with Bat's coloring, there was something weird about the dark. I don't know what exactly it was, but like the darker black didn't quite work out for the head. Maybe it's because Bat was just using the same lines with no the same amount of pressure throughout it. Maybe that's it. I don't know exactly what it was, but it stood out to me. And I do also like how Bat challenged themselves with some of the tricky poses, like the, I don't know what it's called, the fisheye one, where it's both Croy and
What page?
It is page 38, the final one where it's like the fisheye one where they're both...
Where the bottom panel?
Where it's like from the demon's perspective. I like that Bat's challenging himself with that and trying to do more challenging stuff.
Yeah.
And that's the best way. That's a good way to learn shit. Is just also why comics in general are a good way to learn is you got to fucking y'all calling me out in my chat. But,
I was waiting to see when you were gonna see that.
But yeah.
I do want to ask a thing because I'm not a furry expert, so I'm going to defer to you. But now that you're pointing out page 38, I'm a bit surprised. I'm not sure which artist drew what here, but I'm just going to name it. I mean, to me, when I see the name, I just think of the drink La Croix. So I'm curious as to why La Croix looks more like a house cat. I thought he was a panther.
I think that's just, well, the thing is, it's as fuck. I think the main thing that makes him look like a house cat is that his eyes might be slightly bigger, but his muzzle is good for a big cat. Like, if it's a house cat, it would be a smaller muzzle. And also, that was one of the things I kind of wanted to mention about Obergoat's side, was that I felt like Croy's eyes were a bit too big on that, because that makes him look more like a house cat, because big cats tend to have smaller eyes. And also, some of the front views...
There we go. Can I just take the time out and say that I super appreciate the comment section of this Junkcast. It's just made it all worth it.
Oh,
it's Le Croix.
Le Croix.
Just sound really like a pissed Frenchman when you say his name. Le Croix.
But also, for Obergoat's side, which was the first inked one, I do like his ink. Just wanted to mention that also, that I like what Obergoat does, where he has the outlines be a super thick line. That's
I really love that.
I love. It's a bit like the only thing I can think of that does that is like Demon Slayer does that, and that's my aesthetic. That is my absolute aesthetic.
Give me them weighty inks. That's what I'm talking about.
So just one general anthro tip, actually using Obergoats. I'm looking at page 37, the first panel with Croy. There's one of the big problems that is not talked about enough when drawing anthros is anthro heads are different, which means that the proportions of the entire body you'll likely screw them up, because a lot of people use the head size as the proportions. So when the head size of anthros is different, it changes up how you deal with the proportions of the rest of the body, which is, and sometimes what people do, and I don't like the solution that sort of Obergoat did, where it's just make it a human head. It gives it like too much of a top cranium. For big cats, or just cats in general, and anthros in general, one thing I've been starting to do, furry's hard, but money is good. That is exactly it. To help drawing anthros, and I'll put a big ass video. It's like my favorite video of drawing anthro heads in the resources later. Is first just draw like the main shape of the head, which isn't the same as a human. It's like slightly. Anthro heads are generally slightly smaller but wider. And so draw that first shape, and then once you find out which way the head is facing, draw a secondary shape. to represent the muzzle. In a case of like Croy, what I'd probably draw is not like a circle, but like since it's a big cat, I'd give him like since he's a big cat, I'd give him like more like basically a more square shape. Yeah, it was surprised we made this very lecture.
Load.
Yeah, but yeah, the trick, it also helps even doing that for like the front view. It'll help a bunch make it look more like they have a muzzle. Is drawing that, and furry's fucking hard. Furries are hard, and the
aside, the whole collaboration and the comic itself was really nice.
Yeah, no, I really like.
And I commend your efforts, and I'm trying to just wrest this back from furry lecture to the collaboration itself.
Back to the actual comic. No more furry. Like how these neutral characters are using, not just mindlessly fighting them, but like finding some to recruit, or at least in case get some information out of him, then Croy recruits him for the Mafia. That's pretty cool. That's why I wanted to highlight it, and I also wanted to shout out Bat for themselves with like tricky angles, and also the establishing shot on the 38 page. I like it. I like what they did with that wall. It was. So I don't know if y'all have anything else to add for these two.
I do actually. I would like to go back. I would like to go back to the first part of this, of the safer hell. You all sure are digital artists. I can say that much. So what I mean by that is, like, I see everybody who starts digital kind of like does the same sort of thing, and this is you all need to work with your typography so that it's part of your art and not just a drop shadow. Because I can see here a lot of you use different textures to like fill out the space of your backgrounds, and then when you add words, they don't stick out. So then you add drop shadows and all these other effects, and it doesn't look great. So I would say actually look at Raji's stuff. Raji was an artist who was very dependent on digital, like as a crutch. So, and if you look at the progression of his comics, he went from these sound effects that were like out of place to now it's more part of his more naturally part of his art. So that is something that I would advise all of you.
I would definitely second that. Like, I would second that recommendation. Raji is definitely a fantastic example of someone who was an artist. No, I'm just playing. Someone who was a digital artist, and their like fonts and text was heavily dependent on whatever they found on the internet. And then they were like, no, screw it, I'm going to do it myself. And it became so organic and sort of a calling card to their comics. Like, if you pulled out their sound effects and put it into somebody else's comic, you would recognize it as their style and their look, and it fits so well with their art. So yeah, highly recommend that as a reference point.
And I can see that here on like page 43, that they did a mix of it. Like the parts that were obviously drawn in like sound effects look great. The parts that are like obviously like digital and far too clean for the style that's like there, definitely like stands out in a not so great way. And also for that first half of that collaboration, there is way too much busyness with all of those digital effects to like fill up the background. This is why this might be a personal preference, but I do like when artists use more of the white gutters. Like, I know people like to change it up. Some people don't use that. The second part of this collab does not use white gutters, and that works there because of the balance of the page. But the first part of this Safer Hell section, it suffers from the fact that like there's no breaks in the art. Like, you need a little bit of that breakage, or else it all kind of blends together and it's really muddy.
I can agree with that. Which I'm curious to hear your thoughts on what I want to talk about, speaking of gutters, because they use their gutters. Well, you're going to listen to it because I'm talking. Anyways, we're going to go to You Wouldn't Like Me When I'm Happy, which features Astrodial and Heathen, and features our very own Mayor Smile. And for those who don't know who this guy is, Mayor Smile was elected on the Election Royale 2018 with this fantastic comic, which I am linking right now in the lecture notes for some context. Because it's like, why is this guy important? Why do we care? He was elected by the Void community for some insane reason, and now he, rules Void with an iron fist, and he decides that when hell's on Earth, not to hide in a bunker as his aides are recommending, but decides to put on his battle gear and go fuck shit up, and I'm all about that. Oh, dude, Mayor Smile is the best. I love him, and it kills me that there are no more comics past the Election Royale of his aside from this, and I definitely want to see more.
Yeah, Brandon's a dad.
Yeah, way to be a dad and a responsible adult.
Now let's beat up the dad.
No, but I did want to just touch on the combination of, it's Astrodial and the Disciple. Let's just go with Dawn, because everybody knows Dawn. Dawn, their colors, and Heathen's inks, what a combination. I super dug this collaboration. It was just visually stunning. And Heathen, if you're here, I am dying to know the method behind page 33, in which you took I'm assuming they were traditional? I'm not sure if they were traditional or digital, but just your inks and your digital colors, and you gritted them up so much. Well, Dawn's colors. You gritted them up so much that it looks traditional to me, and it totally fit with the aesthetic that you were, I assume you were trying to exude. So good. I love it.
Yeah.
I completely agree. The mix of colors is phenomenal. This was my favorite part of the whole thing. It's beautiful to look at. The middle part of page 32, when you're just looking at his face, that's a beautiful panel.
Yeah. Oh, and forgive me, it's page 34 where just the background inks and color just have been a grit overlay or just effect that I just thought was really neat.
I just felt that sequence was a little confusing of the helmet turning around. That could have been spaced out a little better, but that feels like a minor nit compared to how much I like the rest of the comic.
Yeah, and I love seeing the process, because he was super open with his just building of each page, especially page 33. He started out with just having Smile in the battle gear standing straight on to the viewer to show off the entire outfit. And then at the last minute, he said, no, this isn't dynamic enough, and completely changed it to this sort of a 3/4 pose, which I thought was more in your face, especially with the axe sort of in the viewer's face. I just thought that was a great edit, and it was great to see somebody's process and be that open.
Oh, I haven't seen it, so that sounds pretty cool, actually.
A lot of his work, he posts a lot of videos in art chat of his processes. I love seeing that. He's also in voice chat a lot more now, where he's just he has his camera on and he inks on paper. But yeah, I love how Heathen's just so open with showing more of his progress stuff, because I love this. I love heavy inks. Heavy inks are just my jam. They're so good.
You like those dummy thick inks.
I love those dummy thick inks.
Goodness. No, the fact that these are colors that I didn't even expect in a scene like this, it just punches it up to an intensity level that I hadn't even anticipated. When I see this, if someone handed this to me, I would have been oh, I guess, make some gray armor and a gray axe and a white skull. But Dawn was nah, screw that. I'm going to make it crazy. And it looks so good. Yeah.
Also the pink and purple on the final page of this, the page 34.
You wouldn't think to put pink and purple with Smile, but it works.
Dawn's a mo, let's make this crazy.
Yeah, I know. Oh, look, we're getting some inside stuff. For comparison, Heathen's edition of Noise was much more impressive than mine. Yeah, I like how you guys took each other's efforts and just went make it bigger.
Oh, also Sai explained what Heathen did for the Noise stuff a little bit up. In case.
I also like everybody rushing in like, no, I mentioned the mayor in my comic. Take a look. It's my comic. Look. The mayor was in my comic.
I'm glad to see the mayor getting more face time. It's such a character with so much potential, and they won their election royale in such an unexpected way that it was super well deserved. And I wish they would bring more to Void because it seems like such a symbiotic relationship. Also, can I just make a huge nod? Speaking of now that we're still on the colors, a huge, not even a golf clap, but just an applause to Dawn, coloring practically everybody's collaboration, even stuff that like they weren't even a part of. It was nuts.
Yeah, Dawn was super like. I've heard the stories of Dawn just like coming in, it's like someone needs help, and Dawn's there. Like the moment someone's like, "I need help," like before they can even finish it, Dawn's like, "Shh, I'm here for you. Just shh. I've got
the hero we don't deserve."
Just like as they're talking, and just Dawn puts just a gentle like colored brush on their mouth. Shh, I'll color this for you.
A little sound effect. Clap. It's okay.
Clap. It's okay. It's okay. We'll put these happy little hell colors on your comic.
There we go. Oh, I love it. Well, that aside, it wasn't the shortest out of all the collaborations, but it was definitely like the most impactful to me. But speaking of impactful, I also wanted to move on to the second one that I wanted to focus on, which is Boomer Humor, which was, and I'm going to butcher this because I have no idea how to pronounce it. It was done by Dofer and Snagger, and it featured Curtis. And I wanted to say that the history of traditional comics on the site is always so scant, but when they actually do rear their heads, it's always in super spectacular fashion. I can just off the top of my head think of fantastic traditional artists, which is Jaime and Tin Man, which to this day just blow my mind. And I think Snagger's work is no exception. They've definitely come in here with something new and special, and I love the expressions that they do and just the ridiculousness of their character. It's just super neat. I'm assuming that I'm making a lot of big guesses here, and I think you're in the lecture notes chat, so correct me if I'm wrong, that this was done via watercolor.
Yeah, it's not is in
Yeah.
the lecture. Also, Kozi, you were asking earlier about Hieronymus Bosch. Was this comic whack? Because I just noticed that.
Yeah, it's a little nod to Hieronymus Bosch.
Oh, that's so fucking cool.
I know, right?
It's like he was like Hieronymus Bosch.
We're getting legit hell nods here. We're getting like some art, like legit art lecture notes in this collaboration. And it was so great to see a comic that. And this isn't like a jab to everybody else's. I love the fact that everything was bombastic and ridiculous and completely in true Void fashion of everybody like, oh, wow, there's hell on Earth. And this is totally crazy. But you know what? It's just another day in Void. But this Boomer Humor collab just went the completely different end of the pendulum, which is we're going to have a mundane story about, Curtis buying beans. And I don't know why that's hilarious, but it really was. I don't know. The Dane pedestrianness of like, you know what? Everything's going to hell in a handbasket because hell is outside. I'm gonna go buy some beans. It was hilarious, and I couldn't stop smiling page to page.
Also,
So I want to add something about the watercolors. So in one of the Loomis book, Andrew Loomis, books that like pretty much everybody should be studying, he adds something at the beginning in one of the forewords where he's like, I don't understand why, but everybody loves to try watercolors, even though it's the hardest thing to master.
It really is.
So watercolors are hard to deal with for several reasons, and part of this might be also like scanning watercolors is also super difficult. So I feel like maybe you lost some quality along the way. So the struggle of watercolors is that you're working backwards. You're working backwards from your highlights to your darks. So there are some areas of this comic where I wish you had paid a little more attention to that, to working where your highlights were, to make things
I can
a little
definitely see that.
But watercolors are, again, very hard in general to master, even though like everybody loves trying out and dealing with watercolors. So that's just something to keep working at.
So if there's one thing that, at least my stereotype with watercolors is that it's always sort of, I mean, for lack of a better term, watery and not very intense or bright. There was one takeaway from this, and I don't know if this was you futzing with the settings in your digital editing program, but your watercolors in some of your pages are really intense, like page 28, and even your Boshnod on page 29, those yellows and oranges are like really in your face, which I thought was surprising.
Yes, Nagger mentioned in the chat they had to go to Photoshop to change some of that stuff up.
Ah.
And I'll be one person that's like watercolor, as someone who's just has a miserable time with watercolor because I just can't get any. It's too watery for me. It's like trying to drink. It's like I try to drink water.
I didn't anticipate the water in watercolors.
It's just the struggle for me. It's like trying to drink soup with a fork. I just do not get it. It's not for me. But I love your watercolors, and also part of what makes it funny, just part of what I always like about your comic, is all the fucking different expressions you put on your character. They're just all super good.
If there's one thing that I would nitpick, it would be definitely, how would I word it? Because there is something of a messiness that lends itself to watercolors, which I think is a good thing when it comes to especially like page 30 with the ruins of the supermarket interior on the bottom panel. But I would definitely recommend that you tighten up your inks. Like the top right panel on page 30, where you have just this great just setup of the clerk who is completely dead. I can barely make out what their name tag says. And it's not for the fact that it's too small. It's just that the writing is just so scrawly that I can't make it out. So I would definitely recommend just, especially when it comes to your inks, tighten that up.
I don't know anything about watercolors, but would like heavier inks in certain points like help emphasize shadows? Is that a thing you can actually do with watercolor? Like, could you like make like maybe potentially like some maybe flat, not necessarily as extreme as black spots, but more like heavy lines? Is that a thing you can actually do with watercolors?
I mean, you can do heavy lines with any media. So
Yeah.
I don't see why you couldn't do that with watercolors. But I could definitely see how their inks would lend itself to wanting more weight. Man, you're just thirsty for them weighty inks, Arts. Like,
I love the dummy thick. That is my thing, is dummy thick ink.
But yeah, overall, all of these collaborations were really great, and I wish we had like all freaking night to talk about them. But I did say that I wanted to keep this short and sweet, at least for the first Junkcast, and I wanted us to focus on at least for us, which were our favorites. And those were our favorites. Were there any last things that you guys wanted to ask?
Oh,
Or even note?
One final thing, shoutouts to Sai for critting every single fucking collab in the comics. Like the fucking king comic taking crits for every single one.
That is ridiculous. Like I mean, if we look at the table of contents alone, the numbers are just ridiculous.
But yeah, there's a lot of good stuff. And
yeah, but don't feel there's still time to comment and crit on this. So like saying whoever was working and putting effort in this will appreciate you for doing so, even if it's a good job or this is what I like, this is what I didn't like. Every comment is appreciated, so highly recommend.
Yeah, y'all. Comment on comics because
This was
satisfaction.
What were you gonna say, Will?
I want to say, like, this was fantastic to see. I love seeing this sort of the community come together and share some of these stories, because we always, like, when Armageddon comes around, we just kind of go, oh, it's up to the community to hype themselves and include their stories. But there's a lot of stories, like I especially love the last Armageddon, King of Robots, and I would have loved to see like a lot more people participate in that storyline. So this was really awesome. And not only that, the other stories we're getting, the BBs, like, this has been the most interactive, probably, like, Armageddon that we've ever had.
Would you say that's because a threat that we have now is somebody that's near and dear to everybody's hearts? So now they're super duper inspired to kind of like come out with their own stories, trying to tie into that.
I'm sure that is also like a great big factor, and also maybe everyone's just horny for hell.
I mean, you're not wrong, dude. No, I could totally agree with that. I don't know what it is, but this year's Armageddon has just brought the creativity out in everybody. The stuff that I'm seeing that's even still in progress right now outside of this huge collab has just been fantastic. I love it.
It's all the good stuff. All this good stuff from this collab.
Yes, that, and I will reiterate the huge italicized, bolded, slanted to the side, and with the underlined maybe of Armageddon Fallout. If you guys are interested in that possible next collab, Cab hasn't confirmed or denied. I would definitely recommend looking into that and possibly DMing them.
As they put out the cookies for 6 and get like 20 something people.
It's just a little, just meet and greet. It's gonna be 5 people. I have like 1 package of Fresca.
Oh my god, I just had 2 Frescas today. They were so good.
Oh my goodness.
This also puts the pressure on the threat and the defenders to deliver now. Like everybody else is, putting in the effort. So, man,
no
issues right now.
No pressure.
There's Shen. Go kill them. Badger, go kill them. Or not kill them. Don't die.
But yeah, I just want to put this out. Thank you guys so much for coming in and listening to this and just having us feature just a small fraction of the fantastic collaborations that were a part of this. I hope to do more Junkcasts in the future because based off of just bandwidth and the efforts that the staff is going through, I'm not sure when VCast is going to come back. So if this is something that you guys enjoy, or just, the hackneyed DIY-ness of this Junkcast was something that was cool, we would definitely like to do it again, possibly have different people featured, or even do another sort of Q&A like we did with Cab, which completely was not planned. We were like, oh, hey, Cab, what's up? While you're here, let's just talk to you. So if you liked it, send us DMs or just comment, and I'd be happy to do this again.
I'll do it again. I love talking stuff and talking about comics.
I just want to take a moment to apologize for because I see some people feel disappointed that we didn't talk about theirs. But as Kozi said, this was informal, not a lot of time. I wish we could have talked about each and every one of them. I have opinions about all of you. I'll get to writing those down eventually.
Duo has opinions about all of you.
No, Don, you'll never get the fucking code.
Duo will never validate Don.
But yeah, just for context, this current Junkcast went about an hour and some change. So if that's something that's palatable, or if even something for the next Junkcast you guys wanted to do something a bit longer to maybe even cover more content, I'd be happy to take that into consideration. If you guys have DMs of ideas and suggestions, I'm also happy to take that as well. It's called a Junkcast because it's janky, and I'm happy to just include things in this jankiness to make it less janky. So this is for you guys. And on that note, that's all I got to say about all this. Thank you guys so much. This was me, Kozispoon, and Artson. Do you want me to call you goodies or baddies?
Just goodies. Baddies as well, it's in hell, but
okay.
It's mostly goodies. It's mostly goodies, I swear.
And William Cole.
You can call me Master, Lord.
Oh, that's not happening.
No.
Don, no!
Just writing you. Wow, Don, wow.
Oh, now he's drunk with power. Thank you, guys. Bye.